Well, good morning, everyone. I know we've still got, I think, several people that have registered that are going to be joining us soon, but let's go ahead and get started so we can be mindful of everyone's time. And welcome to the show, so to speak. So this is the first one that we're doing. This is called the Emergency Management Roundtable. And with any luck, this is going to be about a quarterly, maybe even more, kind of a virtual event. So the idea from this came out from a few different conversations that we've had over the past few months with the lack of ability to network with conferences and kind of all of us missing some of that. How do we stay up on topics and everything else? So while there are a lot of different avenues for information out there, I think the ability to gather some subject matter experts together in a room and kind of have those conversations, have an opportunity for questions is still a really important thing. So I'll really quickly introduce our panel that we have today. We have a really good group. I'm very excited about this. So we have Andrew Owlett with us. He is a senior crisis management, resilience, strategy, innovation, and data analytics leader, board member, public speaker, educator, and innovator with over 14 years of experience in various consulting, private sector, and public service, including federal, state, and local capabilities in industries that include technology and e-commerce, national security, public safety, higher education, legislative affairs, and health. Andrew is now the Global Business Continuity Lead in Amazon, Operations Technology and Information Technology, and leads both business continuity and strategic supply chain risk management programs. Also with us is Lindsey P. Anthony. Lindsey is the lead chief of disaster and healthcare emergency management at Augusta University's Center of Operational Medicine. Lindsey has helped craft the Certified Hospital Emergency Coordinator, the CHECK program. And after teaching courses throughout Georgia, she has gone on to deliver the courses across the United States and abroad. During the past 12 years, the CHECK program has become the national standard for credentialing hospital emergency coordinators. The National Disaster Life Support Foundation's National Training Center East, located at Augusta University, where Lindsey serves as the program manager. Lindsey has coordinated and led a multitude of training courses and exercises, including helping with the development of the Ebola training program for AU Health. Currently, Lindsey is part of a committee to rewrite the AU evacuation plan, as well as serving as vice chair of the Hospital Emergency Management Committee. Lindsey serves on the ADLS and CDLS revision committees and has evaluated HCEP compliant ASPR funded exercises at the local, state, and national level for over 11 years, including being a chemical stockpile exercise preparedness program evaluator for FEMA. Also with us is Tobias Watson. He is the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for a 2-campus hospital and has been in the role for 3.5 years. He has over 10 years of professional experience encompassing emergency management, firefighting, and emergency medical services. His passions lie in training, exercises, and community engagement. He also enjoys innovating new ways to solve problems around limitations and obstacles and shares them with his professional network so that everyone can move forward. And I myself, I am Chuck Lane. I am the Director of Training and Education for a disaster restoration firm called Blue Sky Restoration Contractors. I am currently also an adjunct professor with Lindsey for Augusta University and National Disaster Life Support Foundation. I'm also an adjunct instructor for the Center for Domestic Preparedness, where I teach a few different classes down there and may have seen some of you in the past. So everyone, welcome. Excited to have you all here. So I'll let you all jump in and out, on and off of mute as you would like to, but what I would like to do first, Lindsey, I'm going to actually pose one of the questions to you to get started, and then we can go from there. And I should mention for all of you joining us, so we are going to use the chat box feature for any questions. So if you have a question for one of the panelists, we would like them to expand on a point a little bit more, feel free to type that into the chat box and then we will get that on. Or if you'd like to answer or ask a question that's a little bit more lengthy, you can let me know in the chat box and I'll unmute your microphone so you can ask that question. So Lindsey, let's talk about this, just exactly what we're doing here and trying to piece together. So why is networking so important for current emergency managers as well as aspiring emergency managers?
So I think one of the foremost comments that you hear in our industry is emergency management is built on relationships. It's imperative that you have somebody's business card, that you have spoken to them, that you've had that connection with them prior to the event occurring, right? So network, meet those people, find out who they are at conferences. And you made your introductions and talked about the fact that we can't go to conferences this year. I don't know if anybody noticed, I was frowning over here because I'm very much a social person. And that's, I've missed that this year. But take every opportunity you can, whether it's local, whether it's national conferences, state conferences, but get out there, put your name out there, meet people. You may not interact with these people on a daily basis, a monthly basis, or even a yearly basis, but expand your network. Do it in person, do it online. LinkedIn and other resources are out there, right? Be active, be engaged, build your community. Chuck, you're muted.
Sure enough, and notice that. Andrew, Tobias, anything to add to that? The joys of the digital world, still trying to figure it all out.
I think what I'd add to what Lindsey just said is just highlighting her last point. I mean, be active, be engaged, right? I mean, just because you form a connection one time on LinkedIn doesn't mean that you just stop the conversation after saying hi. Just being consistent about it, and consistency is relative. It's what you make of it. It's it could be once a quarter, once every 6 months, once a year, but just keep that connection alive. It's a relationship. It's my wife always said, before we got married, she said, we need to keep the relationship active and alive. And I said, okay, like, what does that mean? Date nights. So, I mean, think of networking in that sense. And, maybe you'll see some value on both sides out of it. And there's some give and take there.
Yeah, those points are really great. I would say one of the things that's really good to get networking, if you're not comfortable, I'm on Lindsay's side. I am a social person. I go to conferences and I go and shake everyone's hand. I go have conversations. I don't like to stay in my seat. But one thing, if you're not into that social side of wanting to actually go and start those conversations, a good way to get into that is, be on LinkedIn, asking questions. But if you go to a conference, do a poster board. Maybe you're not comfortable doing a presentation. Maybe you don't have enough material to do a presentation yet. Do a poster board on a project you've done either in school, in your job, professional or personal, something related to EM. And people are going to come to you. They're going to want to know about that. They're going to take the handouts you have. They'll ask the questions. They'll start with conversations, and they'll remember you, and they'll reach out. And you can use those contacts to connect on LinkedIn or some other platform. So it's not a cold call. It's you've already met. You've already been interacting at a conference. You've just been able to present something that you know and you've done. So that's a great step into networking.
So let me ask you all this, and this is one thing that I've noticed a lot, and I know I'm already recognizing some of the participant names on this group, and I've noticed that they have done it. But what I see a lot of people do is, especially when they're early on trying to build their network, and for those of us that I checked this morning, I'm approaching 1,000 connections. And with that comes sometimes a lack of, always being able to see people, keep up with people. I've had the interesting things of people that happened recently to somebody that's on here, actually, and we were talking about it. I've had people that I know I connected with and had in my network, and then they've fallen off, and we've had to reconnect, and all these kind of joys of working again in the digital space. But one thing I've noticed is sometimes when people are trying to build their network, they'll hear a name, or they'll see a connection with somebody, and they'll just go ahead and send that connect out there without any type of message, with any type of anything to it. So what do y'all think about that? How do you navigate when you're reaching out to somebody that maybe you've seen their name, you see they have a following, you want to connect with them, but you don't actually know them? How do you navigate around that?
I want to jump in on this one right away.
I figured you would.
I'll take second.
So I got on LinkedIn reluctantly, probably about 1.5 years ago. And then I realized when I first met Chuck Lane at a conference that there was a LinkedIn emerging management presence on LinkedIn. And so then I started trying to connect, and I started off just sending connection requests, no messages. And I really started quickly learning that this is about relationships. So I then started sending a message with each request. Now, if you don't know the person, if you've never seen them before, you've just seen them as someone you might know on LinkedIn, or you saw them post a share post on LinkedIn or make a comment or they like something, you're like, oh, that's how you came to see them. You can have no interaction with them whatsoever. Go to their profile, look at what their experience is, look at where they've been, what specialties they go into, what their education was. And so when you send that message, so my expertise is in training exercises. That's where I want to be. So when I connect with people, I actively connect with other training exercise managers and coordinators. And I will tell them right off the bat, hey, I like T&E. This is where I want to focus my expertise. I saw you do this as well, and I'd like to connect with you, and hopefully we can learn and grow together. Very simple. If you want to go more in depth, bring up the college, maybe similar projects you've seen, bring up a post that they shared in an article, and actually go and engage with that. It's great when people connect with me and they're like, hey, I saw your post, and I go look back and they had no engagement. I'm like, well, still like it always, come on. So that's a great way. Find something that you guys mesh with, even if you have no interaction whatsoever.
Love it. Lindsay?
So I'm going to go with sort of the old-timey media thought of no press is bad press, and say that I tend to just send them. I don't often actually write up something unless something just really strikes me or grabs my attention. I think where I am most reliant, though, because I don't normally send messages with them, is the fact that normally people I am choosing to connect with, I already have multiple mutual connections with. And so I think to that respect, then my network starts speaking on my behalf to say, like, oh, well, like, I'm connected with Chuck, so of course Tobias is going to accept my request because I'm connected to all these other folks in between us. And so I'm just, my dad from a very young age always told me, ask, the worst they can say is no. And I pretty well double down on that with everything in my life. It doesn't hurt to ask. If they turn it down, then I may send a message, but I haven't really had that be the experience. And sort of like in the intro with networking, I just find it to be empirical to grow those networks. And you never know when you're going to need a resource in a particular state or with a particular background with some kind of specific subject matter expertise. So, I just try to keep it going.
I'm I know I didn't raise my hand and say I wanted to go third. I didn't think that was necessary, but
no, we're gonna kick you off now.
But I'm kind of in the middle of both approaches. I always thought that sending a message was the best approach, and I did that for a little bit, and then I took the Lindsey approach. Yep, coining that right now, the Lindsey approach. And I'll call the other one the Tobias approach. So you both get credibility there with both approaches, right? So, I've kind of done a little bit of both. Do I see a science behind which one has more effectiveness? Not right now. Some days, I'll be honest, I'm a little lazy and I don't want to type a message and I just want to hit that button, connect. And then other days I'm like, okay, I'm building up a little more courage here. Time to type that message. Or maybe I did listen to a podcast or was attending a virtual networking event like this. And I just wanted to say, great job on that virtual networking event. Wanted to connect with you to continue the dialogue. Like Tobias highlighted, like, it doesn't have to be anything too extensive in your message. And I think LinkedIn limits how much you can type as well in a message when you're connecting with somebody, which is great. You don't want to give them a book. Yeah, so I'm kind of in the middle of both the Lindsey approach and the Tobias approach. So I kind of do both. So, yeah.
I like it. So Andrew, while I've got you, I'm going to go ahead and ask you this one because I want to kind of keep this momentum going. So I know you work on both the EM side and the business continuity side. And one of the things, that we really want to talk about in this session is, that next generation coming up in emergency management. We talk about this a lot, that emergency management and business continuity are kind of, sibling programs, but they're not the same program. So talk for a minute about what can emergency management / and or however you want to phrase it, business continuity professionals do to kind of get themselves into this field? What are some of the differences that they need to look at?
Yeah, so great question, Chuck. So I think it's a couple different things. So I talk a lot about transferable skills. I think it's super valuable that folks that want to get into business continuity, emergency management, or any type of resilience umbrella discipline, that's what I call it, kind of like the resilience umbrella there, whether it's risk management, IT disaster recovery, there's so many different disciplines out there that kind of run together. And I tell folks transferable skills are key. And when I talk about transferable skills, I'm talking about data analytics. That's so important in this day and age, whether you're using data and you should always be using data to drive tactical and strategic decision making during an incident. And you want good data because there's a lot of garbage data that comes in during an incident response, and you need to be able to filter that really quick to make an informed decision. So data analytical skills are really important. And even when you're doing mitigation type activities and planning activities, having really good project management skills from stakeholder engagement and communication to organizational skills to just understanding what a project plan is and how to engage with your stakeholders. I mean, these are all skills that are transferable among so many different disciplines, not just emergency management, not just business continuity, or any resilience discipline, but so many others. So I tell folks to really diversify their skill set. I think that's really important. And even before that, when I'm talking to folks, like everybody on this call today, emergency management is kind of like that first stepping stone in an incident response. The emergency managers are coming together to really triage the incident, help initially treat what's going on, bringing the stakeholders together, kind of controlling the incident response. And then those business continuity professionals are ensuring that those most critical business functions of a business, of a corporation, of a public sector entity can continue. So these two disciplines need to work hand in hand. They need to run in parallel because if an incident is going to go on for 30, 60, 90 plus days, and you can't get access to a building to get the people in the building, or if you can't continue work in a virtual environment, then you need those business continuity professionals to bring that expertise to the table. Kind of the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to turn it over to the other panelists to kind of provide some more input here if they want. But all of these disciplines, I said resilience umbrella. I like to think of emergency management, business continuity as really a broader resilience discipline, and also as a risk intelligent discipline. I think that all of the resilience professionals out there, they're doing risk mitigation activities. They're bringing risk management to the table to prevent bad things from happening, to be proactive, to lean forward, to plan, to form stakeholder relationships, to build capabilities, whether it's communications capabilities or something else. We're all coming to the table for the same reason, for the good of the company, for the good of the country, for the good of the community that we're in. We're trying to prevent or minimize risk, some sort of risk from happening. So kind of like shifting the mindset a little bit, that what we do is just incident response, or what we do is just recovery. We do so much more as a community, and I think that's really important to just keep in the back of your head.
Yeah, that was great. I'd like to add on to that. I think what you talk about transferable skills is so important. And in conversations on LinkedIn with Keith Owlett and Chris Ainsworth, we started talking and came across this concept of, do I want to be a emerging manager who has to add professional skill sets, or do I want to be a professional in the business world who adds emerging management knowledge? The question came from emerging managers. Often we can be siloed in because of our very specialized area, and a lot of times we don't successfully interact with the different business operations, meeting facilitation, clinical leaders, different areas, and so we're not speaking the same language. And so it's hard to get initiatives and proposals pushed forward and accepted because we're not working with them on their level. And so what I'm trying to do now with my career is, I want more emerging management experience, but I'm trying to gain knowledge and skill sets that are good overall in the general professional world, and then apply that emerging management knowledge to that situation.
I think some of both of what each of you are saying also comes back to sort of the thing that started us off with networking. Part of that is selling yourself, right? And when we're talking about either business continuity or just this idea of sort of building that umbrella, getting yourself out there, getting into the career field, it's utilizing and leveraging your past. And really, it doesn't matter what job you've held since you were, legally or otherwise allowed to work. I started receiving a tax information at 15, and all those jobs have helped me get to where I am. You learn something in every instance that you can bring forward and you can use to keep pushing. And I think that's part of it, right? You find what has been useful in previous endeavors, in previous jobs, and you figure out how you can apply that to the world of emergency management. Sometimes it's a background in sales. Sometimes you're, in other areas, but it doesn't matter what it is. There are tidbits you can take from everyone and you can leverage forward in emergency management. It's kind of honing in on what those are and using them to your benefit.
So real quick, I want to go, we've got a couple questions that have popped up in the chat box. So I'll give everybody kind of this one, including the attendees. If you have any good emergency management podcasts, make sure to throw those in there. EM Weekly has come up. So if you have any suggestions, make sure to throw those in the chat box. One came up on the LinkedIn conversation, basically said, do you ever reject requests to connect? And if so, why? And I'll give everybody just kind of a minute to quickly respond with this. I will tell you mine. As my connections have grown very vastly, kind of back to Lindsey's point about, we see who is connected to who and say, oh, well, if they're connected with them, then I'll accept it. And the interesting one for me is I have very, very broad connections in a lot of industries, up to and including, just for some examples, I'm connected to Brock Long, I'm connected to Jocko Willink, a few different people. And so I think there are some things that we need to be careful of when we're sending a request out, as Tobias mentioned. If you're just sending a request out and you're building your network up, I think that is very much a time to kind of send a note and say, hey, I'm building my network. I'm an aspiring emergency manager. Would you mind connecting with me? And usually those requests I will accept all day. I noticed that Allison posted in the chat box as well. If you're selling me something, generally if we connect and the first thing that I get is a sales pitch, I'm gonna disconnect pretty quickly. And that's not to be rude. I understand everybody has a job, but my company, we're in the business of sales, and it's just that's not a really good client facing thing. You want to build up a little bit of a relationship before you just hit somebody with that. So those are about my only times. If you send me hey Chuck, would you like to connect? I'm an aspiring EM. I'm going to accept that. I'm going to accept that all day. So anybody else? I'll open it real quick. Lindsey, Tobias, Andrew.
I agree with that. If it's a sales thing, it's pretty well immediately getting pitched from me. And I think, sort of Tobias's point earlier, most messages, when I get a request and it comes with a message, more often than not, it's about sales. So those I generally pitch immediately. You're right. Build a relationship with the person, have interaction with them beforehand. Don't just sort of push that. And then the other comment is that things that are obviously spam, because you get those, and ones that come with their profiles that are not filled out or completed. If I click on one and I'm looking at it, and the profile has either nothing or has one job listed but doesn't have anything on education or activities, and I realize that each new account starts somewhere, but I think that's, goes back to the conversation that you just had and the comment you just had about building it initially with the people you know in person and then working to expand that network. Because if something comes across to me with only 5 connections and, very limited profile, I'm like, this is spam. This is spam. Nope. And occasionally I'm positive they're not spam, but it's somebody who's either not familiar or who's new to the platform.
I go with my gut, like to what Lindsey, what you were saying. I mean, sometimes you look at somebody's profile and you're like, something's telling me not to accept that request. It's like anything we do, just go with your gut. I don't have too much to add besides that, because you guys just took it away with the sales piece. That piece always irritates me, being the receiver of that. And I've been in sales too, Chuck. I mean, like you were saying, I mean, the company you work for, I mean, you do a lot of sales work. And I mean, the first thing you're taught in sales, I feel like, is form a relationship with somebody, and, organically grow the sale. Don't be exactly, Tobias, like, come on. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Adding on to what you all have said, something I do differently a little bit is, if I get a connection request, most often, if you send me a message, I'll accept. But most often, I will always go to your profile, check it out, and I'm looking at, as Lindsey said, is your profile filled out? I go to look at your activity section. This is my big selling point here. I look at your posts, your activity, your articles, and documents. People I'm most excited to connect with are people who have all 4 of those areas filled out to show that they're active and engaged, because I want engagement in my network. But activity, if you're engaging with or posting political content that is not driven by your job, so emerging managers, we deal with politics quite often, but I'm not posting about politics on LinkedIn. When it comes to COVID, I'll post about some targeted stuff about politics, how we can do something politically to move COVID or move this agenda forward. That's fine. But if you're engaging with politics, if you're engaging with controversial content, it's out. There's probably only a couple of people I've connected with because they were aspiring EMs, or they were people who other content I really appreciated that I connected with, that they still had controversial things going on, and I unfollow them so I can go back periodically to check out their profiles. Otherwise, there's people I get that are very active, and I look at what they post, and it is all just kind of junk that I don't want showing up on my feed. In that case, I won't connect with them. People can still follow you if they want to see your content. Doesn't mean you have to be following them as well. So that's kind of what I go through.
I think that's a good one to think about, because we don't often think, sometimes we forget about the algorithm and how things show up. And, everything you like, everything you comment on, everything you interact with in any way, shape, form, or fashion can be seen by others on LinkedIn. And, you don't have those same privacy settings as Facebook and Instagram, where you like a post and it doesn't show up to everybody else. And I think especially aspiring EMs really need to be mindful of that. So I want to jump off on that, Tobias. I want to direct this question to you to start, and I'm going to change it up a little bit from what we talked about earlier. But so the big with this, we're talking about the next generation of EMs, right? Because even us here, we've been in the field, most of us, over a decade now, and things are already changing dramatically. They'll continue to change in 5 to 10 years, and we'll be the old hats, and we've got to pass it off to the new generation, right? Unless we get a reboot or a spinoff series, which is not looking too good. So what are some of the most common challenges and barriers that you're seeing to the new generation moving into emergency management as a career field?
Yeah, this is something I've experienced, even though I've been in EM specifically for 3.5 years, and I've had 10 years behind me on that. I still consider myself a new guy in the playground, new fish in the pool. So one of the things I've experienced, and that I get a lot of questions on, is what education or training do I need to take to get into this? And there's no clear-cut guidance on where you go. What is the starting point into emergency management? That's because emergency management is not a profession, we're a field. We're a job field, because we don't have standards that are universally accepted. We do have, International Association of Emergency Managers, who has a code of ethics, has principles for the jobs, but otherwise, you can enter into emergency management in any way and form. There's some very unusual ways to get in, and it's based on your own experience and how you've developed that path. And that's the biggest struggle right now, and the biggest thing that people have to overcome is how do we get in? And so the challenges I see, that there's no universal education standards, there's no job performance standards, and so that's something I've tried to help with the questions and content I've put out, like the FEMA training roadmap. It's very targeted to just America because of FEMA training, but I started with something, a concept that I knew about. So I think to overcome this in a personal level, we're not going into the how do we overcome this for the whole profession yet. That's going to take years. But at a personal level, it's those connections. It's how you network. And I saw someone ask, how do I get experience in training exercise? If you want to get into emergency management and you aren't getting paid for it, and those interviews aren't popping up, you're not able to get in, you have to create those opportunities for yourself. So when I first started into this, when I was in college, I went to our campus store, and I was talking to them about some emergency response, and then I offered to do emergency response training for them. At that point, we didn't have a university safety and security manager to do that. And so I started doing training and emergency response exercises for the staff in the campus store for robbery, active shooter, things like that, theft, just to walk them through that. And I'm able to take that and put that on my resume now. I performed XXXX. When I was working at summer camp early college, I did the same thing. I was hired as a zipline director, and they found out I had firefighting EMS experience. And they're like, hey, would you be able to kind of look at some of our plans? And so I rewrote all their plans for the summer camp and for the full, kind of external groups coming in, and then I performed some communication drills and exercises for them. Guess what? That went on to my early resumes on how I was handling things. So you have to create those opportunities. You may not get paid for it as an EM, but you have to show that you're willing to put in the work, that you can perform, because ultimately any employer, regardless of emergency management or not, doesn't want to hire the best candidate. They want to hire the safe candidate, the one that they know will perform and bring value to the company. You could have the best everything on your resume, but if you don't have the proof, it doesn't matter.
I think just piggybacking on what Tobias just said, you have to learn and be curious, but you have to also tactically execute. And what I mean by that is, taking Tobias's words just now, if there's not an opportunity that's immediately in front of you, you go create that. And that's a part about being just continuously learning, being curious, and then actually executing on what your goal is at the end of the day. And interestingly, I have a similar experience that Tobias just mentioned about, his professional career and how he created an opportunity. When I was in the fire department, because when I was first starting my career, I was really interested in what business continuity was. I was heavily involved, obviously, in emergency operations, being a firefighter, and then did some emergency management work. But I always heard business continuity, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I went to the local Subway right across the street from the fire station. I knew the owner, and I said, have you ever thought about what a business continuity plan could look like for your Subway? And she said, no. And I said, would you mind if I made a business continuity plan for you? Because nobody thinks of business continuity when they're a small business just starting out and everything. That's not the first thing you think of. You think of, okay, how am I going to survive tomorrow by getting clients and, blah, blah, blah. So I helped create a business continuity plan for this local Subway just right across the street. And that was the first time I ever did it. And, if I ever could get hold of that again, I'd love to look at what it looked. I can remember bits and pieces, but I'm sure it wasn't my best work. It was something that was interesting to me, and I wanted to figure out if I wanted to, eventually make a career of it. And hop, skip, and a jump later, I ended up doing that. But you have to create the opportunities, and I teach as an adjunct, like Chuck and Lindsey, and I told one of my students, they're heavily involved with, like, they want to be involved with active assailants stuff, and they want to prevent that from happening in their community. And I told the student, I said, you know what, forget about the semester assignment that we have. if you can go to your local church, because this person's involved in the church community, and create an active assailant plan for that local church, that'll be your semester project. Go do it. Because that's practical experience that's worthwhile. It's making a community impact. It's a skill that the student doesn't have, and the student did it. And that's creating an opportunity where there's obviously an opportunity, and engaging with the local community, taking the initiative to do that. And there's plenty of use cases out there. What Tobias mentioned, what I just said. If you guys have connections, which I think everybody does, being on this call, use them to find that opportunity. If you can't immediately think of it, use mentors to help guide you too. So, just, a couple tips there.
I'll say, I think I came into it a little bit different than it sounds like Andrew and Tobias did, a little bit more from the academic side. Although, like most in academia, we still had to do internships, and being that I was an intern for the Georgia Emergency Management Agency, the guys who I worked with in the field office said, basically, look, we can't pay you. We realize we can't pay you, but here's what we can do for you. And so they started letting me go to all the state training and education. And so while I couldn't get paid, they allowed me to take all the FEMA IS courses, as part of my on-the-job training, and some of the other courses offered by the state. So by the time that I was within a month or so of finishing up my degree, I had a certification to go in hand with that, from all the training I had completed there. So you talk about, Andrew, making your own path and kind of figuring out what you can do to set yourself up right. Because of course, and I forget which one of y'all made the comment about the hiring process and who they ultimately hire, but absolutely, you have to show that not only you have a skill set, but that you can function and use that skill set, and that it's applicable to their organization, that you can fit in with that team and sort of hit the ground running. And so, sometimes it's not always, like you said, the most experienced, the smartest, the whomever. It's a lot of ways the person who can make it actionable.
Love it. All right, so carrying that thought on, I want to talk, we've got a few different questions from the group, and I want to just kind of briefly hit on these. So Tobias, this one's directly for you. It says, Mr. Watson, I've seen your posts on LinkedIn about exercise scenarios, and I think they're amazing. How would someone get their foot in the door to get into exercise formatting and evaluation? Tobias, you're still on mute, bud.
There we go. Yeah, so I think following the examples that I just gave and that everyone's given is sometimes you just have to volunteer and create that opportunity. Ask someone if they want that opportunity to happen. Otherwise, to get a quick intro to it, go online and to the FEMA independent study courses. Take IS 120, 130, 139, and that will give you a quick overview and how to do exercises, how you perform those. And then take a HSEEK course, that's Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Program. That will really give you a more in-depth overview on how to perform, give you a lot of good resources for how to design, execute, and evaluate these exercises. Otherwise, for me, I've always been into a training mindset. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I started off in martial arts at 11, and within a year, we were assistant instructors teaching the other classes. I mean, it's just taking my knowledge and putting it out has always been something I've been doing, and so it's been a little bit more natural for me. But I also think about scenarios all the time. I mean, I'm driving, whether I'm riding a car, whatever, I'm thinking about scenarios. It doesn't stop. And so I use that to create scenarios in my job field. And so a good way you can step into this is whatever job you're in, or if you're associated, if you have kids in a daycare, they're going to a school, if you go eat at Subway, anything, ask them, have you done training or practice for this kind of event? No. Would you mind if I worked with you to design a training or an exercise to practice this? If you can get a contract pay out of it, great. If you can't, just say, hey, I'm willing to volunteer. All I need is for you to professionally write a recommendation for me. And I'd like to use this information to promote my abilities. And that can be a really great trade-off. And if they like it, they're like, hey, tell other people about it. Tell your other daycare, tell your other businesses about it. And then, you know, lo and behold, now you're getting calls to do things. So if you can't get paid for it, you have to create that opportunity, ask to do something. Because if you're getting paid for it and it doesn't turn out well, they're not going to be happy about that. But regardless, if you're volunteering and you do anything, they will always be very grateful for the work you put in. And so that's a great step into this. And that's why I really recommend.
That's a good point. Another thing I would add on to that is, you know, find out whether you want to be in healthcare emergency management or not, whether you want to operate in that space. Seek out your local healthcare coalition that may be in your region and talk to them. Look for a regional healthcare coordinator, search for that information, reach out to your local or county office of emergency management, find out who that person is, and find out how you can participate in the exercises. If you have a little bit of a background, you have some education, they're always looking for trained observers and evaluators, but you may be able to, as Lindsey mentioned in the chat box, you may be able to jump in and kind of join the exercise, be a role player, and kind of see how these things go and see how they function and really get some ideas for that. So excellent. So one of the other questions, I'm gonna kind of blend these two together and I'll open it up to the group. So long question, but two parts here. Let's talk about this. So can you speak to the critical importance of writing skills, especially technical writing skills in emergency management? I see a lot of people trying to network who may be lacking in this area. And as a sometimes hiring manager, that first impression is kind of hard to get past. The second part of this is, what are your thoughts on external networking and how do you keep your hands and head in other thought environments? For example, I work primarily in health and human services, but still maintain leadership roles in fire, emergency response, fire prevention, mitigation, industrial health and safety. Before I turn it to y'all, I'm just going to throw my piece real quick on that second one in. I think all the four of us have had very non-traditional kind of rises into emergency management where we, you know, I can especially speak for myself, where I almost found myself in that role one day because of a bunch of other random things I did. And I'm still very much in that space because my day-to-day role now is very much organizational effectiveness, employee development, working for a disaster response company. But then I get to go put on my Augusta University and NALSF hat and teach certified hospital emergency coordinator classes, which is very much my background. But then I get to go to CDP and put on the decon instructor background or the healthcare leadership for mass casualty incidents instructor hat. And so I'll let y'all kind of run with that. But I think for me, you have to maintain anything that you want to maintain as a discipline. If it's not your day-to-day anymore, and really even if it is, but especially if it's not your day-to-day, you have to make a very, very concerted effort to continue to read, to attend classes, to network, to do things almost like you're starting over again. So for me now, I don't get to write an active shooter plan and do controlled exercises and drills for my organization anymore. I do a little bit here, but it's not the same in an office like this versus in the healthcare space. But anytime I can go jump in and work with our local PD or OEM or something, I want to go and participate with that as much as I can. So, all right, so I'll open that up to you. Writing skills, technical writing, and external networking.
Okay, well, I guess I'll jump in here. Writing skills. I can't tell you. I neglected this in college and in high school. I was like, my main goal was like, I'm going to be wilderness search and rescue. I'm going to be firefighting. I'm not going to have to write anything. You know, forget papers. And then I went into emergency management. We write a lot. And so I've had to back up and read a lot on writing skills and formatting and better grammar and everything. So I'm no writing expert. I hand off any article I've posted, any big project I do, I hand off to other people like, I need you to check this. So that's great, but it is so important because you need to be able to write proposals, grant projects. You need to be able to write actual technical plans. You know, step one this, step two this, considerations that. Here's a basic overlay of what we're going to be doing. Writing is so important because your emails as an emerging manager are not just going to other emerging managers or other people. It's going out to the community. It's going to your senior leaders. Your emails will go to the CEO of your company for something that you're doing. You have to remember that. And so you do not want to write like, you know, some third grader. So get your spelling up to date, get your grammar, understand how you write. Don't try to write how you talk in a professional email, write professionally. And so sometimes there's templates out there, there's assistance, but you have to get those skills up to par. And even if they are, always do a double spell check. I can't tell you how many times I get excited about a post on LinkedIn. I'll post it and I look back and I'm like, oh, I gotta go change these sentences. I gotta go change my words. I mean, yeah, you guys are all in that same boat. So writing is super important. And so I'll leave it there. I can't expound on how much more you need to have those skills up to par. On external networking, yes. If you're not, like Chuck said, if you're not in this, in a certain area, you need to be intentional about gaining that experience. So I continue to, I mean, I think all of us probably have our main job plus two to five other contracts, part-time positions that we do from time to time. And one of my things is I teach EMS. So I still have my foot in the EMS door, even though I'm not practicing and running calls anymore. And that started because when I got to college, I knew the position I was in for the ambulance wasn't trauma-based. Well, I needed to keep up the trauma skills. So I just asked the instructor at my college if I could attend their EMT classes off and on just to gain some of those skills. Lo and behold, their instructor didn't show up, and so he hired me to be the skills instructor for the college, just because I was intentional about trying to maintain my knowledge and experience in that field of trauma. And so it will open up other opportunities for you, but you do have to reach out. You have to read, follow people, engage in other conversations, and you're going to have to put some money forth to attend conferences, to attend training courses, to make sure you're networking and being in that environment.
A couple things. Chuck can personally attest to this, as having played trivia with me and seeing some of my atrocious spelling. I am not good. There's a reason I have spell check set on my phone and on my computer and everything else. Nothing goes out without it. You know, that being said, I think your point about writing is right on, but it also comes with a caveat. It's knowing who your audience is and who you're speaking to. One of a very good friend and colleague of mine put it in, I haven't found better words for this, so I'm going to steal his. And that is basically, depending on who you're writing to, your bachelor's degree tells you how to write papers and how to do, write some of the research and all of that. Master's program, you do some of that, but it's also how to do an executive summary. And so it's not just about being able to write these very detail-oriented plans that are very lengthy, but it's also figuring out how to be abbreviated and concise and put together, you know, a white page or a one page or a two pager then go to your point, to the C-suite, to the administrative level of your organization and up, so that you can speak to the different audiences and you can make sure that you are cognizant of who you're speaking to and adjust yourself accordingly, whether it's in writing or in person, and having those conversations. On the external networking portion of this, I think it provides some really interesting inputs for us as a profession, in that because we have come from a culmination of other, it's, you know, it helps to know some about each background because so many people in emergency management come from varied areas. The other thing, though, is it also helps for me with some bias that we develop and with some thought processes that we get really ingrained to. And then I think it kind of helps keep you fresh to be engaged in some of those other areas, know what's going on in their worlds, and then you kind of come back and take a look at something of yours and have a like, oh, wait, I hadn't thought about it from this approach before. Let me take a look at this again. So I think, to your point, Tobias, you absolutely have to be intentional about doing it and engaging in those, but I think they provide some excellent opportunity for growth in your own area, even though sort of the idea is outsourced, if you will.
So quick story, because I know we're short on time here, but writing skills, the other panel, everybody just harped on that. Writing's so important. I remember 12 years ago being told you should go back to high school to take a writing class. And that was my first wake-up call to that I needed to put some more time and attention into writing. Even though I wrote EMS reports and stuff, that was not the type of writing that prepared me for corporate writing, for federal government writing. So that was a lot different. So I had my wake-up call. Some context, I mean, every company does things different. Every organization does things different. When I was in the U.S. Department of Defense, it was always bottom line up front. At Amazon, it's 10-second summary. You have 2 lines to get your point across. If you can't get your point across in 2 lines, you have to write a narrative, which is a paper. So it's a 2 to 5 page paper, and it's all writing to get your point across. And that's how decisions are made. Just adding to writing, I think soft skills in general are super important for emergency managers, for anybody in any sort of profession, whether that's writing, whether that's PowerPoint development, whether it's Excel skills, Outlook skills. I mean, for goodness sake, just understanding how these tools work is really, really important. And then being on the cutting edge of the emergent tools that are coming out, and understanding how to use different forms of technology is important, even though we all have hiccups sometimes. I'm talking on mute all the time during meetings, and we not to poke fun at Tobias or Lindsey or Chuck or anybody today that may have done that, but I do that all the time. So the other thing, external networking, diverse backgrounds and understanding different industries, I think is really important. We don't live in a day and age where it's a one-size-fits-all solution to all of our problems, but if we can take different solutions from different people, I think that makes our job more worthwhile, more relevant, and we can really gain a lot from that. So yeah, I always encourage external connections from different industries, and yeah, so that's my 2 cents.
Love it. All right, so I know we're coming up to the end of the hour, so I'm going to do one more question, and then I will ask everybody hang out for 1 second while we're answering this. I'm going to try to put our panelists to a challenge of a 1-minute response, but I want to make sure that I throw up this slide for you all here before you jump off with some information about the next events, and then also want to give the panelists their opportunity to put their emails, contact info, if they're willing to share it in for the attendees, whether it's email address, LinkedIn, or whatever. So here's my challenge, panelists, starting with you, Lindsey, 1 minute or less. What's the #1 challenge to emergency management 2021 and beyond?
Oh, okay. So first of all, for 2021, it's going to be moving past 2020. It's going to be not being like TSA and reactionary, but actually acknowledging that we have other hazards out there and making sure that we're well prepared for those, that we don't sort of get stuck in 2020. There you go. There's 25 seconds maybe.
All right, Andrew?
So I think, just to highlight what we spoke about earlier, and you caught me at a good time. I'm taking up some of my time now intentionally because I'm going to have a 20-second response to you, Chuck. But highlighting what we talked about earlier, I think the biggest challenge is not taking initiative. I think, folks just sitting around putting in applications and not getting hits and not actually going out and knocking on doors is one of the biggest challenges that I've seen over the last 6 months to a year in the emergency management community. And if people need help with that, reach out. There's my contact information. Let me help you try to get a foot in the door, whether it's connecting you with people in my network, whether it's helping you with your resume, whether it's, helping you knock on doors to get that opportunity. So that's what I think is, the biggest challenge.
Excellent. Tobias?
Biggest challenge for emergency management, from my perspective, is, as I talked about earlier, we need universal standards on education and performance. So there's no job titles in our field mean absolutely nothing. I've created a matrix on all the different types of job titles we have, from specialist, coordinator, to director, vice president, and response, preparedness, recovery, management. And they all mean either the same thing or they're completely different. You could have two same job titles and they do two different jobs. We need education standards, so people need to know at what position level you're in emergency management and how much experience you have. This is the amount of education you need to have or need to obtain. Whether that's formal education or that's certain certificates or training courses, you need to have a certain level of knowledge. We need to have that expectation. There also has to be defined ways to get in. Entry-level positions are very hard to come by because people don't want to hire. Most often the budget is one person, and you want to hire the best person, and the entry level is not the best person, and so we need to have better opportunities. And so those are the struggles moving forward in this field, and once we can accomplish those, we will become a profession that is recognized and included across the board.
I love it. All right, everyone, I'm going to share my screen really quickly, give you some information here. So panelist information is up there, names, follow us on LinkedIn. So I'm starting to actually build this out as a full platform now. So if you would like any other information on future sessions, if you just need to reach out or if you want to get in touch with the panelists, whether it's now or down the road, reach out to us at emroundtable@gmail.com. Also, if you want to get on a mailing list for future sessions, I will send you the link. That is all I will use your email address for, just to send you the link for future sessions. So if you want to sign up, please let me know. And then we are going to start recording these, which we did with this session today, uploading those to the YouTube channel, the EM Roundtable. So follow us on there, subscribe, and we will start putting this information. And maybe as we build this out, a few more good things there. So thank you all very much for joining us today. I appreciate it. For those of you actively working in the field, whether it's volunteer, as a profession, whatever you're doing, thank you so much for what you do. 2020 has been a heck of a year on all of us, and make sure to take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for taking time out of your day for joining us. I know it's been beneficial. I'm seeing a lot of great comments in the chat box. So thanks to all of you for joining us. Hopefully we'll be bringing all of you back in the future for some other topics. So next session is tentatively scheduled for January, I believe 27th right now, end of the month. And we're going to be talking about 2020 lessons learned with the question mark. So shoot me an email and we'll get the link out for that registration. Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your week and stay safe out there.